I recently have been introduced to the bleed stacking thanks to Old Knight's video, so I wanted to test out how good bleed stacking actually is when used in a practical setting on master mode, and if it is competitive with other things like just basic destruction ramping into an elemental enchantment. Now, I theory crafted a way to make the bleed stacking viable in terms of like using it, so let's go over the spells really quickly. So the big issue that I noticed immediately with bleed stacking after testing it myself was that you have to ramp at least like 5 to 6 times before the bleed damage is competitive with a destruction ramp. Now, destruction ramp, casting 2 spells and then hitting, and definitely casting 3 spells and then hitting, will result in huge damage or instant kills. So in the case of this build, though, we don't really need our enchanted weapon to be dealing enchantment damage, but we can have it doing something else. All right, so for the first spell, ignore the names of these. The names are wrong. I figured out the order I want. So for the first spell, we have Paralyze for 1 second. Paralyze is cheaper than Damage Fatigue. There might be a way to ramp into Damage Fatigue or Drain Fatigue to basically paralyze. The things that can't be paralyzed aren't really threats, so I don't mind it. The big things that are threats are paralyzable. But weakness to magic, 10 seconds, paralyze 1 second, cost 27 magicka, pretty cheap. You will need 100 destruction and 100 illusion for it to be 27 magicka. And then the next spell is soul trap for 7 seconds and weakness to magic 100% for 10 seconds. Now, the soul trap is to refuel Azura Star because we are running an enchanted weapon. And this is actually a very technical build. So essentially, we have a Daedric Dagger with weakness to magic on strike for 3 seconds. I tested it on 1 second so that we got more uses, but it doesn't last long enough to stack. So essentially, the combo goes something like this. You hit an enemy, put weakness to magic for 3 seconds on them, and then you cast the paralyze. You hit them, and then you cast, and then you switch and cast the soul trap, the ramp 2. You hit them, and then you recast the paralyze, and then you hit them to kill them. So you paralyze them twice to prevent them from moving and fighting you. You soul trap them to refill Azura's Star, and you eventually ramp into 6 ramps. So hit 1 is base weakness, cast 1 is ramp 1, hit 2 is ramp 2, cast soul trap is ramp 3, and so on. So it goes hit ramp, cast ramp, hit ramp, cast ramp, hit ramp, cast ramp, and you have to spell switch in the middle of that. So if you're on a console and it's difficult to like switch spells mid-attack, or you find that difficult to do, this is very technical to pull off in order to get it working. But let's just do a few tests and just see how it does. So hit 1, ramp 1, hit 2, ramp 2, hit, paralyze, nuke. There it goes. Capture the soul. Refill it. Alright, so there we go. And then we can actually just jump in the Oblivion Gate and just see how we do. I'm curious to see like how practical this is overall. I do think that if we're ramping this much, it's kind of hard to deny that we would be better off doing something else, because we're still relying on an enchantment for damage, but that doesn't mean that the build isn't functional. It definitely is. Now I did try just like ramping off of like dagger swings to see if I could ramp into huge bleed after casting, and I haven't really noticed it being good or like working correctly. We can try that though. I'll try attacking like 4 times then casting twice. See if there's like easier ways to do this. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Cast. Go for DPS. I have to get him away from that. That's an insta kill. It doesn't seem to be applying the bleed. So it hits, switch, hit, paralyze. I mean, it kills, like it functions. It's not like, it's not optimal compared to other combos, but it's serviceable for sure. It does cost a lot of magic though. There it goes. Then obviously once we're out of magic, just like with any build, it's not really the best. So let's reset our magic, and I just want to compare this to just like a basic nuke. Gold brand nuke I think is my go-to for like benchmarking, because this isn't even really like optimal, but it's just decent. So if something is less efficient than this, so let's just equip gold brand And then we'll just switch to this. Now these are AoEs, but that doesn't really matter. So fire ramp 1, fire ramp 2. So fire ramp 1, fire ramp 2. Yeah, I think it's clear that while the build is like serviceable and usable, it's definitely not close to optimal or competitive, but it is interesting. And if you can come up with a better way to ramp into that bleed than what I just came up with, which that may be the case, I'm sure there's some kind of combination out there, then it could be better. But the fact of the matter is we're relying on enchants, and by relying on enchants, it's kind of fair game to assume that we're going to be able to ramp into damage. So like using weakness ramp to ramp the bleed and using Goldbrand to ramp the fire. Either way, we're using Soul Trap, we're using Azura's Star, we're refueling our weapon. Because if I remove the weakness, like if this becomes unenchanted, this build doesn't work anymore and I have to cast 6 spells, and casting 6 spells costs a ton of magicka. So in terms of just like raw efficiency, I don't really think this build is competitive with most things. Now consider Goldbrand is only 22 fire points, or 22 damage of fire on strike, whereas if I had a sword that had like a chaos nuke of like 45 to 60, you can get up to like 70 something over I think 7 seconds if you have like a long debuff on a target. So just like casting 2 spells and then just hitting an enemy deals insane damage. And if we cast 3 spells and hit an enemy, I can one-shot with a low damage enchantment. So I think in terms of how competitive it is, it'll win master mode. It'll be more difficult than other options. But it is interesting, it is cool. Now, does this justify looking at Blade differently because of the fact that Bleed can be ramped in this way? I don't think so. I think that delivering enchantment damage is way more efficient. If we look at Goldbrand, it has 77 uses when fully charged. Right now it's at half charge, so it only has 40. But at full charge, it has 77 uses, which is absolutely insane. It only takes like 3 to 4 hits to kill, whereas with this Bleed combo, the uses on the 3 seconds is around like 60 something, I think like 65 or so. So it has fewer uses, but also it's less efficient, and it also costs us more magicka. Now, actually the spells were cheaper too. So the spells in the 2 ramp were AoE spells. They could have been single target. The spells I cast, like the 1 second paralyze, 27 magicka. The ramp 2, 22 magicka. So we have to cast 3 spells for a total of 60. And for these fire ramps, it was 39 for an AoE. If it was single target, it'd be way cheaper. It'd be like 20 or whatever. And then we also cast a second one. But the nice thing about this fire ramp, though, is because it's an AoE, if I run AoE damage enchant on my sword, I can multi-hit and multi-kill. Alternatively, I can ramp multiple enemies and then like quickly DPS one down and then DPS the other down, because the second ramp lasts longer. So in terms of viability, it is viable. It is kind of neat. It basically functions the same as an enchant like elemental nuke and uses the same types of setups. Like you still want to have your Azura's Star bound. Mine's usually bound to 7 so that when I soul trap, I'm good to go. And outside of that, it's just kind of cool. Now, how does this stack into the weakness to physical weapons ramp? I think that's something for a different video. Ramping weakness to magic does ramp weakness to normal weapons, which is interesting because that improves our on-hit damage potentially by a lot. So what I could do is open with a power attack and weakness to magic, and then just continue a sequence until eventually we keep ramping that. But obviously, in order for that to be good, I have to power attack at the tail end of ramping. So that could be something. I don't know. It's probably going to be about the same, but I'll test it as well. I'm also going to be testing the shield bash that I've seen in terms of practicality. I understand if you run alchemy, you can get your strength up super high relatively easily. But without alchemy, because I feel like most people don't use alchemy, I want to evaluate the shield bash build. But that is it for this one. Definitely check out Old Knight's video. Shout out to Old Knight. He makes good content on Oblivion and has for quite a long time. But yeah, thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.